You know, a lot of my female friends ask me, why do you never make videos about women's watches? Well, first of all, I'm not a woman, so I don't necessarily feel qualified. Also, we know that manufacturers have this habit of dumbing down women's models with inferior movements and specs. But this got me thinking, what about some watches that look equally good on men and women? I mean, I'm not talking about female models that rock giant Submariners, but good watches at moderate sizes that please many wrists. So today let's talk about some watches that you can gift to your lady friend and maybe once in a while steal it back to wear for yourself. Hey guys, I'm Max and this is Watch Crunch. Are you tired of shallow watch discussions on Instagram? Well, come join the best online community for talking watches. We are working through watch-related existential crises almost on a daily basis. I'm a proponent of wearing whatever makes you happy, but there's also something to be said about watches that are well proportioned to the wrist. And I find that good unisex watches, the round ones at least, we'll cover square watches in the second half of the video, they land somewhere between 35 to 37 millimeters. Now, we've been familiar with the club line from Nomos for a while now. A bit less stern than the Tangente, a bit more playful than the Orion. The manually wound club has always been a nice entry point to this German brand known for their precise manufacturing at an approachable price. The Club Sport has been downsized from 42 to 37 in this model and has gone a bit upmarket from the base watch for about $3,000. Here we step up to an in-house Neomatic movement, a couple of very pretty colors, an icy blue and this petro green, and lastly a bracelet option. Now you're probably tired of hearing me complain about the infamous long lugs. What helps to hide them though is this bracelet and its inlinks, so you can avoid that unsightly gap between the case and the ends of the strap. The lug to lug is still longish, but it's much more doable for someone with a 6-inch wrist and above. Once you make peace with that detail, you're treated with a lovely frosty green dial with a strong sunburst brush pattern. The layout is quintessential Bauhaus with painted even numerals interspersed by hash marks. There are 3 lines of text above and a small second feature below the center, and that small seconds features concentric circles as a backdrop. The hands, they're long batons, and the whole thing just manages to be very symmetric and well balanced. The entire case is polished, and flipping it over, we take in the DUW 3001 automatic movement. It's not the highest of finishing, but it is nevertheless pleasing to look at with striping over a skeletonized rotor, blue screws, perlage on the base plates. Where this movement does shine is in its thinness, allowing the entire watch to sit at just over 8 millimeters. The Oyster bracelet really upclasses the club with both polished and brushed sections and a lovely squarish polished clasp. Now, I do wish that they didn't skimp and give us pin and collars for adjustment. I mean, good luck crawling on the floor looking for those tiny collars that somehow always manage to vanish when you're trying to adjust the bracelets. So what are some other great unisex round case watches? Well, the benchmark had always been the Rolex Oyster Perpetual, and by extension, the Datejust. I think you can finally get an OP at retail, and even though it's still almost double the price of the Nomos, you do get a very solid build, great water resistance, and name recognition, which may or may not matter. Yes, the OP might seem a little bit boring, but you can always get it in one of the fancier colors, and it should be a trusty companion that holds its value well. Now, what if we want something different? Something from the Far East? Well, I suggest you look at the 37mm SBGW line from Grand Seiko. Grand Seiko has really developed this line of watches in the past couple years to now about a dozen models and counting, but it all started with the SBGW 231 with that creamy off-white dial, the beautiful Zaratsu finishing. I've also reviewed the 277, which was limited to 150 pieces with that mossy green texture dial made to recall the foliage of Genbei Valley. And my favorite though will probably be the 289, which has the off pink dial, comes on a bracelet and features the 44 GS case, which has all kinds of interesting angles and intersecting surfaces. But regardless of which one you get, they all have the trusty 9S64 movement, which gets you 3 full days of power on a wind. Yes, you do have to hand wind this one, but that's part of the fun. Some honorable mentions in this category are the newer, smaller Omega Aquaterras, and then the often forgotten Tudor Black Bay 36. These are slightly sportier choices, especially the Black Bay being basically a Black Bay 58 without the bezel. Okay, now let's switch gears and talk about square watches, or rectangular watches, if you will. Cartier is synonymous with the tank shape. And I love Cartier because you always know one when you see one. The classic Roman numerals may not be the most practical for reading the time, but like Andy Warhol, who sets the time on their Cartier anyway? Now, I've made a video about the Santos Dumont, which is a great choice, but it's quite feminine. A better bang for the buck may be the Tank Solar Beat in large. At around $3,000, you get that classic Louis Cartier look without having to pay for the precious metal, and in a perfect unisex size. The Tank Solar Beat might seem a little bit boring, but it doesn't have to try very hard when it's got a century of history to precede it. Now, it being solar, you don't have to worry about servicing it for a decade or more. Now, if we drop down to about the $1,000 to $2,000 range, I saw that Frederic Constant just released a tank style watch with a guilloche dial and a Solita movement that looks pretty interesting. We also have the rectangulars from Oris, but my pick might be the new Longines Dolce Vita. Yes, it's a quartz, but when you look this good, I'm willing to overlook that small detail. The Dolce Vita at 23 by 37 millimeters is a great size that mimics the Cartier Americain shape. The case and crystal are both gently curved along the top side. The polished case has a step along the mid case to break up the lines, and the dial is super Art Deco, looking like it was lifted from the side of a New York building or something. The style has elongated hour markers that radiate out from the center. The sword hands are also equally thin and long, creating a very elegant and cohesive aesthetic. A simple small second dial is found at the 6, and the watch ships with a very non-functional accessory band, but the strap is made of a high-quality top-grain leather. So with the holiday season almost here, these are my choices for watches that you and your lady can enjoy together. But what are your thoughts? Did I miss anything? Let me know on watchcrunch.com. We just came back from Wind Up Watch Fair in New York, and using the meetup feature on the site, we hosted a gathering of like 25 watch nerds. It was really great to see some of you in person, and check out Watch Crunch for meetups near you, and maybe you can even host one yourself. As always, stay crunchy. I'll see you in the next one.